Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. I'm having a wonderful day indeed. So, what would I like to talk about today? It's going to be about how to free yourself from ideologies, or one particular ideology. And the reason I want to discuss this is because I noticed in recent times, or the last year or two, that a lot of people became very attached to certain beliefs, certain doctrines, without actually thinking for themselves, without actually kind of, being themselves in some ways. And they kind of like succumb to this particular doctrine, and they kind of lose their personal value, let's say. It's a little bit hard to explain, but I think you know what I mean. And to be honest, I kind of came from that as well, and I detached myself from all these certain beliefs, and I want to share a little story with you is what I mean. And basically the big picture here that I want to clarify or explain is that basically wanting freedom from ideologies means seeking clarity of thought without being unconsciously trapped by rigid beliefs, or kind of being like trapped in this zone where you have to think exactly how the doctrine tells you to think. And this is something I want to kind of enlighten everyone, so to speak, and kind of free yourself from that. And here's one little story of mine to kind of get an idea of what I mean by that. And maybe if for a long time some of you guys have known that I have a little more conservative tendencies, a little more conservative leanings. And that's perfectly fine. It's fine if you have more liberal leanings. I really don't care at this point. For me, it's like, as long as you are just simply respectful to me, I'm respectful to you, vice versa, mutual respect, no problem whatsoever. And so basically, I supported Trump for quite a while now, and I kind of followed this MAGA trend, sort of, even not living in the US, but I wasn't really like on the MAGA train 100%, but I did follow a lot of MAGA narratives, things like that. And the reason why I primarily supported Trump is not because of his foreign policy, because I think we all know that his foreign policy wasn't exactly, or isn't exactly, the greatest strengths here, and also quite a few domestic policies now, but primarily because, well, at that time, and especially in the first presidency, it was more about the domestic policies, and with all the borders and all the immigration and all of the things that were happening in the country at that time. And I was like, yeah, high time, something happens, and high time, you start cleaning the streets a little bit and getting crime lower. Basically what I wanted was low crime or no crime at all, secure immigration, just having a safer country basically, and a better economy. And some of these worked for sure. I'm not going to deny here, and I think you can pull up the stats here, but a lot of things also didn't work. And I think especially now in the second presidency, it didn't work. And the reason why now I'm kind of coming into this now is because I realized that in the second presidency of Trump, a lot of policies that he promised to pursue, or promised to fulfill, didn't really come into existence, didn't come true. And for example, with the Ukraine foreign policy, or with Greenland, and trying to annex Greenland, like for what? And just all these kind of crazy batshit stuff that he's been rambling about, and also kind of contradicting himself, saying one thing and then the next day he's saying that, oh, I never said that. And same thing with the Epstein files, calling his own voters stupid, and so on and so forth. And this is the time when you actually have to wake up and start criticizing your own base. But I realized that a lot of people on the MAGA train wagon don't do that, and they are just still blindly, obediently following him. Be like, no, this is how it is, and we believe Trump, trust Trump all the time, and they kind of like make Trump into this kind of above godly figure in some ways. And this makes me kind of question, like, first of all, you're not supposed to make someone into a godly figure like that, because that's very dangerous. That's then basically, you can basically say that that's what happened with Stalin and Mao Zedong and Hitler and all these other guys who were kind of trying to personify themselves as deities in society. And this is something what I realized with a lot of MAGA people. Now, I'm not saying that on the left side it's not like that. There's plenty of those candidates who are also doing that, but I'm just speaking from my side right now. And this is the first point that I want to talk about, is that you have to practice this self-inquiry sort of, and you have to regularly ask yourself, why do I believe this? Where does this idea come from? Like, does it align with my principles, and not just simply, just blindly obey your politicians. And what's funny is that the MAGA people themselves claim that you should never trust a politician, but then yet they still trust Trump, and they still do all these things that they kind of preach about the whole time. And you have to fundamentally expose yourself to diverse perspectives, no matter how crazy politics gets, no matter how crazy the world gets. You have to read all authors with opposing worldviews. You have to even read Hitler Mein Kampf, for example, or read the Karl Marx manifesto books. Like, you have to just read them to simply, I'm not saying you have to agree with them, not at all, but you have to read them because you have to understand where their worldviews came from, and so that you can have better argumentation, so that you can have more articulate thoughts in the end. And you have to also listen to debates without taking sides immediately. You have to listen to opposing people, or to people who you really don't agree with, and still listen, because there's always going to be one or two little truths you might agree with. No matter how much you disagree with them, there's always going to be something that you might agree with, and the same vice versa. So this is definitely very important. This diversity of thought is there to prevent any single ideology from, monopolizing your worldview, let's say, right? So, and this is something what I also want to say in that, is that with the MAGA people, they don't detach identity from beliefs. They basically fuse with who you are with what you believe, sort of. And at this point, if you're talking to any ideologue, let's say like a MAGA person, or a communist or something like that, you are not talking to the person, you're talking to that doctrine. And I think this is something what Jordan Peterson was also talking about. He's a Canadian psychologist. I'm pretty sure some of you know. Again, you don't have to agree 100% with him, but from my point of view, he also makes a lot of good points and has a lot of valid arguments in certain aspects, let's say. So you have to detach identity from beliefs, which is very important. And moreover, you have to, I would say you would have to prioritize your direct experience over doctrine. So, instead of accepting abstract principles, you have to test the ideas in your lived reality. So, for example, I hear a lot of people, a lot of communists talking about that, real communism wasn't tried properly in the last 100 years, that despite all the trials that took place in this world, that but it wasn't tried yet. It wasn't tried exactly the way I wanted to try it, and it's kind of like, dude, I think it was like 33, like 1/3 of the world at one point was like communist or something. I mean, if you include the Soviet Union, China, Cambodia, North Korea, and all these other countries, Angola, all these countries who pursued communist doctrines, it all miserably failed. And there are still people these days, or at least in the West here, who still claim that, they have to try it once again because, it didn't work the way they want it to work. So, and you have to first test your ideas before you actually want to pursue this. And that's basically something that I find very disturbing with those ideologues, that they don't understand that a lot of the principles that they believe in might not work in reality. And you have to, ground yourself in this experience, and it helps to cut through ideological illusions, basically. And I think in the end you have to cultivate this intellectual humility in some ways, and accept that you might be wrong in the end, and that's okay, that's perfectly fine. And you have to replace, I guess, certainty with curiosity, maybe. Not sure, probably, because I think Aristotle said something along the lines of like, you can, like, the hallmark of I think the hallmark of intellect is entertaining both sides, or entertaining the thought of both sides without accepting neither of them, or something like that. So that you entertain this idea, you entertain this thought, but you don't accept any of them or one of them, whatever. And that's kind of the hallmark of the intellect, let's say. And I 100% agree with that here, because in the end you're here to learn constantly, consistently. You're never going to be certain of anything, quite frankly. And I would say that humility is, I guess, the antidote to this rigidity that ideologies thrive on. And you kind of humble the ideologues through being intellectually capable of entertaining both sides, or three sides, let's say, if there's a third side to it, without consciously accepting it, let's say. So I think I think the bottom line here is that to be free from ideologies, you have to practice self-awareness, you have to welcome several perspectives, you have to just kind of put yourself in this curious position, and you have to just, I guess, practice daily this kind of routine to constantly kind of debate yourself in some ways, I would say, to kind of always question yourself, and kind of have a little debate with yourself, be like, okay, so as for conservative fiscal policy, what would happen if X, Y, and Z, and from the other side, what is their argument? Try to find an argument against your own argument, sort of. I think that's something what William Ockham was saying, although I'm not sure. There could be another philosopher from medieval times or even ancient times who said something like that you have to find your own, or maybe was it Augustine or St. Thomas Aquinas, I'm not sure, honestly. But there was someone who said something that I'm kind of saying right now, along the lines of that you have to kind of give yourself counter arguments to your own propositions, or something like that. So yeah, I think I'll stop on that for now. I hope you understand what it means to be free from ideologies, and I hope you enjoyed it very much. Feel free to share this video, like, subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day.